Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So this is going to be like my wrap up for Luke Cage Season 1 as well as Season 2, Defenders, Iron Fist, Heroes for Hire stuff. So just careful for spoilers from Luke Cage Season 1. So overall, I think everybody's in agreement that Luke Cage was an amazing series, but where I think people start to depart, where like opinions start to separate, is where it fits in the pantheon of Marvel's Netflix series. So I still think that Daredevil Season 2 is probably the most fun Marvel series so far. I'm hoping that Iron Fist knocks that off its pedestal because the tone of Iron Fist is supposed to be so fun like the way they've been pitching it, but Jessica Jones is like this deeply psychological story that I feel like was the best storytelling so far, but there wasn't so much action in it, so I feel like the big Daredevil fans didn't like it quite as much. Luke Cage had a little more action, like there were definitely a lot of people that got the beat down, but it was really light when it came to story. So I feel like all the comic book people that watch Marvel stuff, because they're doing the comic book characters, like, hey, we're doing this character that you read about that's so awesome, were disappointed when it came to the story. But overall, I feel like Luke Cage was a big success. There haven't been any big series like this besides like Blade about African American characters. That's another thing too. There's rumors about Blade stuff happening in the Marvel Universe, but I feel like Luke Cage is a drama series, like if you set the superhero comic book stuff aside, was really awesome. It's just that it falters a little bit when you try to fit it inside this comic book universe, because you have to remember that they're comic book characters. They wouldn't be doing these series if they didn't want to do comic book characters. If they wanted to do a drama series that had nothing to do with the comics, they would just use different names. They wouldn't call it Luke Cage. But overall, I felt like it was 6 episodes of really solid story stretched out into 13 hours of content. So that's why it felt kind of sluggish at the beginning, and it almost felt like his character had backtracked, like they were redoing some of his character arc from Jessica Jones. So that's why I think a lot of people were confused where this took place in the timeline, because the way Luke Cage was acting in the first couple of episodes was exactly the way he was acting at the beginning of Jessica Jones. So I don't know if that was a conscious choice on the part of the showrunner of Luke Cage, but they all talk to each other, like all the Netflix showrunners talk to each other, so they know what each of their characters is doing. So I was a little disappointed in them rehashing a lot of his character arc, him hiding out. He was hiding out in Jessica Jones. The end of that should have synced up with, say, like the 2nd or 3rd episode of Luke Cage, and then you really don't get into an actual plot-driven story until Stryker appears, which is around episode 6. So I actually feel like they should have started that Stryker encounter with the street fight they had at the very end of the series. It almost felt anticlimactic the way it went down. It felt like a really good fight, but the conclusions he comes to were so simple that it's almost like you could have done that at episode 6 and then done something way more plot-driven, like is there a wealthy person, say like in the Iron Fist universe, that's supplying Stryker with those hammer weapons? Because it doesn't sound like he's getting them straight from Hammer Tech. And for those that are wondering, Justin Hammer is still in prison, but his company, like a lot of big Marvel companies, are so big and make so much money that they continue on even when their figureheads die or get set in prison. They said during Iron Fist they're going to take a hard look, they called it a hard look, quote unquote, at the top 1%, or the top 1% of the top 1%. So like the wealthiest of the wealthy. You're talking like how Tony Stark, rich people, in their actions, big pharma, big corporations, influence what's happening at street level. So like you think about that company in Jessica Jones that they were all investigating where she got her powers from, the ones that were experimenting on Kilgrave, they're like, think of them as like a big faceless evil corporation. They're going to take a harder look at stuff like that during the Iron Fist series. My understanding though is the reason why Luke Cage was so self-contained and felt so small and was probably kind of thin on the story is because they wanted, open to close just to focus on that character inside the Harlem community. So they did an amazing job of that. The Harlem that they presented in the series was fully formed. All the characters had great development. I just feel like they could have done the exact same thing though in like half the number of episodes. So you could have spent more time doing more plot-driven stuff. But I still love the music. I know a lot of people complained that they use Gangstar songs as the titles of each of the episodes, but did not notice any actual Gangstar songs used in the episodes. So it's like, why would you make them the titles if you weren't going to use those songs in the episodes? It almost doesn't make sense. So they're just like a lot of little things that kind of hamper Luke Cage. So I feel like season 2, now that they've established these characters, they can actually have some fun and do an actual plot-driven story. But just going down the list, like my favorite actors, like all of them had great performances, but some of them went just way above and beyond. So of course, Alfre Woodard was amazing as Mariah. Mike Coulter is an amazing Luke Cage. But I feel like Shades was amazing, as well as Stryker. Even though Stryker got a little bit silly late in his story, he came on so strong. So I'll talk about the ending in a second too, but I feel like Stryker will come back next season. He'll be a lot more fun. Cottonmouth, may he rest in peace, also an amazing performance, as well as Pops. Pops was a lot of fun. I was disappointed that they didn't let Stryker kill Pops, because Stryker's whole thing is that he didn't get the love from his father that he felt like Luke Cage was stealing. And Pops was kind of like a surrogate father to Luke Cage. So I feel like it would have been better if Stryker had killed Pops, but that was just one of like the plotting problems and like the way they told the story across the season. Like they didn't want to do Stryker till after they had done the Cottonmouth arc. So you kind of see how they differentiate this season. You have the first half of the season, which is like the fall of Cottonmouth. Then you have the rise and fall of Stryker in the back half. So hopefully next season, Luke Cage won't drag his feet so much. But just to talk about the ending, so we saw Stryker with the doctor that helped give Luke Cage his powers, although technically it was an accident. He's probably going to find that because Luke Cage has like special DNA that enabled him to survive that treatment, and Stryker is his brother, Stryker will also be able to survive that treatment. So when Stryker comes back, he'll be twice as powerful, twice as evil, without the need for all the tech. But he did actually get to his comic book costume at the end. I like the way they did that. Like they had a little bit of fun joking with Luke Cage's comic book costume. I look ridiculous. But they had Stryker in his Diamondback comic book costume by the end too, just like the way that Hammer Tech suit looked. I feel like the biggest collective WTF everyone had at the end though was when Luke Cage got arrested by the FBI, where like he defeats Stryker, everybody sees it happen, they know that he is not the villain, but still like the FBI just kind of comes in the last 2 minutes of the episode and is like, hey, we're taking you away. Like Claire Temple said, she knows a good lawyer, so Daredevil is going to be the one to get him out of prison, clear his name. I hope that they don't sideline the beginning of Defenders dealing with that, because that would be like the exact same thing that happened at the beginning of Luke Cage after Jessica Jones. But the Easter egg at the end, like the tease for Iron Fist, was Colleen Wing's martial arts academy that Claire Temple rips the little tab off. So at New York Comic Con, Rosario Dawson was like, oh hell yeah, like Claire Temple is going to get to kick a lot more ass during the Iron Fist series. But for those of you asking if they're going to do a Heroes for Hire series, I don't think they're actually going to do that. They'll have Heroes for Hire stuff happening, but they're not going to call it Heroes for Hire. They'll just call it Luke Cage Season 2 and Iron Fist Season 2. There are so few series centered around African American characters in the way Luke Cage is, they don't want to diminish that by mixing it with another show. So what they'll do is they'll just have a bunch of crossovers with Iron Fist characters and other Netflix characters. Really in the way we saw crossovers during Daredevil Season 2, like Punisher, Elektra, they were a bunch of new characters during Daredevil Season 2. So expect stuff like that to be happening during Luke Cage Season 2 and Iron Fist Season 2. So they haven't really confirmed anything, but like my thought is that we'll see at least 5 seasons of each of the Netflix series unless something big changes, like the actors leave or something happens behind the scenes. So money is no object when it comes to making these. It's really just a matter of the actors wanting to keep doing them, and they all seem really jazzed up about their characters. But short term, just plan on like 2 to 3 phases of Defenders team-ups. So we'll have like a bunch of seasons of each of the individual shows, and then at least a couple big Defenders team-ups. I don't think it's going to be an annual thing, but it might be like every 2 years. But Netflix will probably say more about that when Defenders actually does drop. And they did say that they're starting to shoot that at the beginning of November, like they just finished Iron Fist. There was a video all about that, so I'll link that at the end of this. But let me know, what did you guys think about the Luke Cage series as a whole, and what do you want them to do with Season 2? I know everybody wants Iron Fist Heroes for Hire. They're like, please just give us the thing. Just let them have all the fun, throw some more comic book characters in there, just get really weird with it. But heads up, tonight, new episode of The Flash is posting. Be sure to subscribe to get that. Jesse Quick is debuting as the next female speedster, so it's going to be crazy. Changing the outro just a little bit. So while you guys wait for that next video, you can click up top for the Iron Fist trailer, and you can click down here for all my other Defenders videos. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.